Hello, it's Dr. Kortni Alston of the Courting Happiness podcast. Have you checked out our happiness library? It's a carefully curated library with books that I highly recommend that are a must for your happiness library. Go to drkortnialston.com/happiness library. That's drkortnialston.com/happiness library. The authors you will hear on the podcast can also be found in our happiness library. You can also purchase their books on our site. On top of that, your purchase also helps this podcast and the mission of courting happiness. Let's spread happiness and the word. Check out books on the Courting Happiness library. It will not only change your life, but it can also help you with your next chapter too. Let's get back to the podcast. Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 42. I am Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for listening. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is positive psychology, of course, but it is also about how to start implementing positive psychology at work. This is an important topic as we dive into workplace well-being, especially with companies transitioning to in-person from remote work or possibly adopting a hybrid model, right? So no matter what your workplace looks like, it's important to understand creating a positive culture that promotes employee well-being really is about allowing your employees to feel seen and supported. It is essential. Positive Psychology in Business 101, Workplace Ideas and Applications is a book that I highly recommend. Again, Positive Psychology in Business 101 Workplace Ideas and Applications is a great resource for managers who are searching for best practices to create positive workplaces. The author of the book is Sarah Lewis, and you can find it actually in the Happiness Library on our website. Now, I'm going to go and share my top 3 of the 9 that she suggests. So the first one is Lewis recommends starting a meeting with a round of success stories. So opposed to starting a meeting with the agenda, which of course the agenda is important, and the agenda could sometimes, it could be a laundry list of problems, right? But what I love so much about what Lewis recommends is starting it off with success stories. I like to refer to it as celebrating your team's wins. You know, what they're proud of. It can be individually or as a collective, but start with creating really a stage for individuals to share their wins. I often share this in training when I'm talking to managers in regards to being able to think about and to share those success stories at the start of a meeting. It really allows people to feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. So it's really a wonderful thing. So I highly recommend what Lewis shares as it relates to success stories. But again, I like to refer to it as celebrating your team's wins. Trust me, it is a win-win to be able to do that. And plus, it's really important to make sure as managers that your team feels seen. Also, when I was a news director working for a public radio station in the Baltimore market here in the United States, in the state of Maryland, by the way, I used to have this email that I would send out to my team, and I managed a team of reporters, producers, and talk show hosts, and I would call it the Big Show, and I would recognize every show in terms of what either an individual or what they may be doing as a collective or something that they've decided to do that's outside of the station that is really showcasing their strengths. And I called it the Big Show. And it was really important for me to, when I would write out that email or really type out that email, I was always thinking about inclusion, making sure my team feels seen, not just certain individuals from the team, everyone, really working to make sure that there's a level of inclusion throughout the entire department, and particularly my department being news and public affairs. So think about what your big show is for your company and celebrating the wins as it relates to your team. The second is become an economy of strengths. I love how Lewis, how she shared that, right? In terms of becoming an economy of strengths. So I just trained a group of aspiring entrepreneurs at Duke University Business School for their LEAD program. It's here in the United States, and I really was so impressed with this incredible group of amazing scholars that I'm so happy that so many of them have reached out to me either via email and or now following me across social media, because they shared so much great insight and had so many wonderful questions that I thought, wow, I want to have a front seat to see all of the great things that this group is going to do. So during that session, I talked about positive psychology, and it was focused on well-being and how to create an innovative environment, really an innovative workplace. But within that talk, I shared the value of positive psychology, what it means, what it looks like, but then also the importance of valuing strengths. And one of the things that I treasure about positive psychology is that it's about the scientific study of how we flourish, optimal human functioning, how we just thrive. And so I also began to tell them the importance of moving an organization towards a strength-based approach, which is really about allowing people to leverage their strengths, opposed to possibly, I love that Lewis also shared this sentiment, opposed to focusing on what could drain them. So it was about really thinking about the strengths of your team, what that looks like, how that goes about kind of fueling their superpower, which is really wonderful in terms of understanding who they are and what they do well. Remember, it's about celebrating those wins. And it's also about putting people in a position of them really showcasing their strengths. So I talked to them about taking a value and action survey, which they can find on the Authentic Happiness website out of the University of Pennsylvania. But it really allows individuals, and I was so happy to be able to share this with the next generation, because it's also about thinking about what type of workplace in terms of creating a positive workplace, but then also what does that look like? What does it look like in terms of leveraging one's strength? So this would be my third. and Lewis says this. She says, educate your managers about this research. Hallelujah. Right? Yes, I'm so glad she said that in terms of educating managers about this research. I felt like it deserved like some type of, reinforcement in terms of really trying to make sure that I'm like, yes, yes, I really value what she shared, because this is important in terms of really understanding the value, right? Of the more that we understand the value in terms of positive psychology, but then also what we can do to implement it, which is one of the reasons why I highly recommend her book, because granted, I love the fact that it says 101 workplace ideas and applications, but she gives you so much to be able to really start with and to be inspired by, in terms of how you're going to go about crafting it for your organization. Like I shared earlier, when I was a news director, managing a news operation and managing an incredible esteemed team of reporters, producers, and talk show hosts, one of the things that I loved doing was really creating was my big show. And if I was back in that organization, one of the things that I might try to do is elevate my big show. Maybe my big show would no longer be an email. Maybe it might be a quick video, right? Or maybe it might look a little differently than it does now, but continually thinking about how to grow it so it can also really serve the value of your team. But also understanding this speaks to the value of really understanding positive psychology. So she mentions that too many managers use criticism and are slow to offer praise. And she talks about the importance of, positive to negative experiences and making sure that you are creating, right, those positive experiences, sharing with individuals what they do well, what their strengths are. I know that in some cases, we talk often about what a person's weakness may be. And let me just give some context there. So recently, I was a reference for an individual who's an amazing person that's a part of my network. And I loved being able to talk about this person. I love bragging about the people in my life. And I love seeing so many great individuals within academia, within news organizations, because most of my career was working in broadcasting. And so I really value seeing people share their brilliance within different businesses all over the world, right? So I am that person that really values being a reference. And the organization that contacted me about serving as this person's reference, they asked me what their weaknesses were. The happiness scholar in me thought, well, okay, great. You want to know their weaknesses. Okay, but let's focus on their strengths. Let's focus on it. But we're so conditioned to think about, well, what do they do poorly, or what do they need work on, or what do they need help with, opposed to, can you let us know all of these key strengths that will serve us and serve our organization, but that are really these key strengths let us know what the quote, I love to say superpower, what the superpower or superpowers are of this individual. I think understanding a person's strengths really allows you to understand the dynamics of how they can really serve your team, right? And so I thought it was interesting that I was asked about this person's weaknesses, opposed to let's simply talk about their strengths and what that looks like and how that would serve. So as I'm sitting here and thinking about some of this and some of these experiences, and then also talking about how this can really help build and grow an organization, I really think it's important that as managers, we're always thinking about how to go about serving a team, serving your team, and then also thinking about what that looks like as it relates to acknowledging them. And I in past episodes, I even believe that in it might have been episode 40 with Perrine, and she talked about belonging and inclusion and talked about the value of, the handwritten note and praising the work and, members of your team. You could send an email recognizing, their accomplishments. You might send a text depending on how your organization communicates. But that genuine email, that genuine correspondence of telling them not just simply great job, but building value in terms of what their strengths are, how they have done this wonderful work in terms of serving the organization, serving the team, and what you see them just doing that is really allowing your company to shine. So, how is the individual an asset to your team? So think about them being an asset, right? What does that look like? What are their key strengths? And what do you value? What do you really value about the great work that they're doing? It's so important to make sure, in order to retain people, is letting them know that they've done a great job, yes, but wow, let me tell you about what your superpower or your strengths, how they really allowed our organization to shine, and you shine too. So to learn more about Lewis and the other 5 approaches that I didn't mention, you can go and check out her book on our website by visiting drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 42. All right. And so I want to end this segment ending it with talking about a quote from one of my favorite scholars, who happens to be one of the founders of positive psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman. And he has a quote that I want to end with, and I want you to think about this quote. While you can't control your experiences, you can control your explanations. Thank you so much for listening. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.